Welcome to Muswell Hill Baptist Church.
He is exalted, the King is exalted on high. I will praise him. He is exalted, forever exalted, and I will praise his name. He is the Lord, forever his truth shall reign.
This is the third video in a series for Lent. We're looking at texts from the book of Deuteronomy, the very same book that Jesus used when he was tested by Satan in the desert. The text we're looking at today from Deuteronomy is Deuteronomy chapter 7 and verse 9. Know therefore that the Lord your God is God. He is the faithful God, keeping his covenant of love to 1,000 generations of those who love him and keep his commandments. In this series, we have already looked at a text about the fact that God is the one true God. This text in Deuteronomy 7 verse 9 is where Moses says, the one God, the only God, your God, is a faithful God. If you look at things from a human standpoint, there are so many things that are faithful. The sun rising in the sky, or if you want to be more scientific about it, the earth going round the sun. The ways in which animals and plants and people reproduce over generations upon generations so that life remains on earth. There are so many respects in which our bodies are faithful, as well as one or two in which they are not, and where we rely on the beating of our heart and the breathing of our lungs, and even the succession of thoughts in our minds. And in these ways, the whole world, if it has a creator, which of course the Bible makes clear from the very first verse of it, you would expect that the creator would be something like the creation the creator has made. God is faithful. The Israelites, to whom Moses is speaking, and they are on the threshold of getting back to the promised land. When we say getting back, this is after hundreds of years of being away in Egypt. And they've escaped from Egypt, which was for them then a land of slavery. And for a generation, because of the way that they had behaved, for a generation they lived in the desert. Now they are about to reach the promised land. It's been a chaotic story. All sorts of grumbles and groans in the desert, lots of times. The very fact it took them 40 years to do a journey that should have just taken a matter of days is itself a revelation of the fact that things had gone horribly wrong. And after all of the issues of the desert, even wanting to go back to Egypt and to slavery, the people are facing a new land that they have never lived in, even though that's where their forefathers had lived. And when they get there, there'll be much more chaos. For a start, there are peoples who have come to live there and who are not going to welcome them. And there are other people that will welcome them, but will expect them to adopt the way of life that those peoples already have, quite contrary to the ways of the one true God. It's chaos moving towards chaos. And in it all, Moses tells these people, God is faithful. Whether God can trust them is a moot point, but they can trust God. And this is a wonderful thing for us all as we move through a world where there are often things that are chaotic, where we don't know what's going to happen next, which is true of every hour and every day. And we are living in uncertain times even as this video is being made. We have a member of our family who was going to Russia to university. And at the time we make this video, going to university in Russia for someone from England seems to be just about the most ridiculous thing anyone could imagine. But at the time, when it was planned, it was very exciting and something many of us would have been quite envious of. Life changes so drastically and so quickly and so unexpectedly. But God is faithful. Moses goes further and says what God is faithful to. He is faithful to his covenant of love. Or to put it another way, God has loved his people when they were in Egypt and crying out to be rescued. He has continued to love them when they have been completely rebellious, of which the great example is that when the 10 Commandments were given on the mountain to Moses, and when he came down from the mountain, they were already breaking one of the first commands. God loved them through that. And God, when he sets his love upon us, keeps on loving us. It's the kind of thing that the nearest human equivalent is found in marriage. When a man says to a woman and a woman says to a man, I love you. You don't need a service and someone giving you the words to say I love you. That can be said on any romantic occasion. So what is that all about? Well, the wedding service is there to say it in the form of a promise, a vow made in front of God and made in front of people in an official kind of way, but it's a way of sealing a covenant, making an agreement of love. In the wedding service, the words that are used are not actually very romantic. For better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health. Till death us do part. These are not particularly romantic thoughts. They are covenant thoughts. It's a covenant of love. And as the man says it to the woman and the woman says it to the man, they are wedding their lives together through come what may. Now that is a shadow of the love of God. God makes this covenant of love and he stays faithful to it. And we see that in a great New Testament story, the story of the prodigal son, who abandons his father and the farm and the family and the land and goes off and spends his inheritance that he's got early and forgets his family. But in the story, when the son finally comes back home, it turns out that his father has loved him all the time. He hasn't loved his father, he hasn't loved his family, but the father's love has remained constant. It is a picture of the love of God, a covenant of love to which God remains faithful. So before these people go into the promised land, Moses makes it clear that they do have foundations, a God who does not change in his faithfulness. And that faithfulness is a faithfulness to his covenant of love. In verse 6 of this chapter, God describes his people as a treasured possession. Now, many people want to be independent. And I suppose a simple way to ask this question is, would you rather be independent or would you rather be a treasured possession? And in many ways, that comes down to the heart of what it is to be a believer. If you would prefer to be without God and without hope, but with yourself, then that's a choice. But to be treasured as a possession of God, to be part of his covenant of love, well, that's a wonderful thing, which no level of independence will ever be able to bring. And of course, independence is illusory. We don't start our life off independent. Nobody who watches my words here today was independent in the first years of their life. And very few of us will be independent in the last years of our life if we live a long life. And when we start to analyse it, we're not so independent in the rest of life. I'm speaking to you in English. This is not a choice. Had I been born in another country of the world, I would have been speaking to you potentially in a different language or in a stilted English because I was learning it later in life. So the language I speak to you in, I have not independently chosen. I have not independently chosen to be speaking to you on the internet and through YouTube. Other people have had to make that possible for you to listen to me. I have not independently come through the illnesses that I have had in life, or there's a possibility I would not be here to talk to you. There are so many things that seem to be independent. I'm in a building where I'm able to make this recording, but I did not build this building, and nor would I be able to keep this building on my own. It's being recorded on a camera that I could never make. When you think about it, our idea of independence is absolutely wrong. The Bible goes further and says that every breath we breathe, every pulse of our heart, we depend on our Maker. In him we live and move and have our being. So the invitation at the end of this video is, do you want to be God's treasured possession? Are you willing to give up the notion of independence for the wonder of belonging to the God who is faithful? Are you willing to face the future all on your own? Or would you like to face the future with an agreement of love where the other party will never, ever withdraw? This is the glory of the God of Israel, the glory of the God who has come to us in Jesus, who says, I will never leave you or forsake you. It is the glory of true faith.